everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap, the 16th, I think, to the 22nd of June, 2025. So, this week, Nintendo had a Nintendo Direct, where they were showing off more of Donkey Kong Bonanza, should be the next Switch 2 exclusive thing, where Donkey Kong is underground and is a miner and is just demolishing the place, I guess. He's just gone kaiju. Revealed during the showcase or the Switch Direct was that this rock creature is going to be Pauline. Probably most remembered from Super Mario Odyssey, but a reminder, she's also like from the original Donkey Kong. She's the person you're trying to rescue, essentially, as Jumpman, who would later be renamed to Mario. So this isn't the first time they've teamed up, if you like. Anyway, then they went into a little bit more of the gameplay. It does seem like it'll be a fun game. It's a Nintendo first party, and it's almost certainly by the Super Mario 3D team. We still haven't had confirmation on who specifically is the developer, but it's almost certainly them. Yeah, it looks like it's fun. There's some really good covers of the Donkey Kong country music. Like, it sounds really good. Ostensibly, story-wise, it's a little bit kind of Disney, I guess. It's like Pauline is trying to get back to the surface world, and she's also trying to gain confidence to become a singer, which obviously we know she does become a singer eventually. But yeah, it's kind of like a, I don't know, self-esteem boosting kind of thing. And I guess Donkey Kong is there because he just doesn't have any of those issues. He just does what he does. I don't know. It's a bit of a Disney Pixar kind of element to it. Anyway, yeah, it's just kind of showing off the game. I mean, I don't think they showed anything we didn't already know. The Pauline thing had already been leaked a while ago. It was like key art had been uploaded somewhere, and people had found it. Anyway, yeah, there's a fairly lengthy video there. You can check it out yourselves. It's about 18 minutes. Elsewhere, we had another showcase, The Blood of Dawnwalker from Rebel Wolves. So Rebel Wolves are an offshoot of like former Witcher developers, former The Witcher 3 specifically developers, and there's a lot of that here. So a lot of the game is kind of showing off the kind of the dynamic and the different kind of gameplay that you'll come across between the day and night cycle. So you may not remember, the Blood of Dawnwalker kind of thing is you're sort of a vampire who can walk around in the sun. So during the day you're restricted to what like a human being would be able to do, which is very much kind of your standard kind of combat. So I'm going to skip ahead to like a combat section here. Combat is going for kind of the For Honor Kingdom Come Deliverance kind of thing, where it's like a directional aspect to it. So like you can attack in any direction there, and then it's like he's going to attack upwardly, so you need to dodge upwardly or block upwardly and that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. He gets his fucking ass kicked though in this scenario, and I think he just says, I forget. I'm gonna have to paraphrase it because I forget exactly what he says, but it's something like that was easy, or that was handy, or whatever. And he's like, he's reduced to half health at some point here. Anyway, it seems like combat might be a bit tricky. I don't know. I'm somewhat reminded of the original Witcher, which did have a sort of gimmicky rhythm game to it. I mean, it didn't have like a directional combat thing, but it was sort of like a more of a rhythm game as opposed to a real-time action game. Anyway, I'm going to skip ahead. The guy that got decapitated was pretty cool. And we're going to skip ahead where they go into like this cathedral that's on the map. So he's in this cathedral. Baptism has become baptism through blood because vampires. And they're kind of pointing out that during the day you can get in here easily. It's a like publicly accessible location. And it's only at night where they kind of lock the place up. And you'll find out why. But also during the day you can't access any of these like scaffolding and stuff like that because you don't have your vampire powers. But anyway, they changed it over to nighttime. It's kind of up here in the corner, 22 days left, and there's also a nighttime timer here at the top. I'm not sure how... Like, it's not clear if the game is actually, like, real-time changes, or do you have to, like, complete events, or do you have control over when time advances and stuff like that? That's not quite clear yet. I suspect it's the latter, that you don't... that you don't have control and it just moves all by itself, which might be a bit frustrating for some people. Anyway, with your vampire powers, you kind of have access to like short-range teleports and like detective vision, effectively, kind of thing. Anyway, he ends up back in the cathedral, finds out that there's other kind of weird rituals that go on at night, ends up in a boss fight way too early. This is meant to be like a late game boss, and he's tackling it at like mid game or something like that, and he just gets his ass kicked. Anyway, it's a fairly lengthy video there, 20 minutes. Last one. Speaking of lengthy videos, games to get excited about. Fest. It's 110 games in about an hour or so. It's kind of a sizzle reel here of all the different games. All of them indie games, for the most part, quite interesting. Quite a few that I had never heard of as well. So I'm going to leave the link there for you guys to check it out yourselves. It's, as I said, it's almost an hour long. More than an hour long, rather. Just going to pick out a couple that I kind of like the look of. So this is Norigin, which is very much Shadow of the Colossus, basically. It's got this nice kind of painterly style to it, I guess. It's somewhat reminded of like Journey, the Pathless, that game company kind of thing. But yeah, it's quite clearly a Shadow of the Colossus thing. It's not clear if you're actually trying to kill these creatures or not, because you don't appear to have a weapon. I assume you are, but you don't have a weapon in any of those. Nightfall Shade is this kind of dungeon crawler thing that has like a really intricate combat system. I'm not sure what all the meters on the top left are meant, or on the left-hand side of the screen are. There's a lot of shit going on. That's all I can see. And some really horrible-looking creatures for you to fight too. I think I quite like the art direction to it. And from kind of smaller gameplay snippets that I've seen, it does seem like it's quite involved, quite intricate. I'm not sure if it's a roguelite kind of thing, or if it's like a linear narrative situation. Anyway, it does seem like there's a lot to it. Hallowblade. I think it's kind of like a Kingsfield situation. It's like a first-person Elder Scrolls kind of thing, but a bit more involved melee combat. I think Elder Scrolls melee combat's a bit shit, to be honest. And it remains to be seen if this one's any better necessarily, but it does seem like it has a bit more going on. And I do like the kind of... I mean, I guess it's a bit silly to say I like the palette when the palette's like 3 colors, but still, I do kind of like it. Oh, hang on. There's some blues in there too. We got 4 colors. Anyway, that's Hallowblade. And then going in a little bit of different direction, a little bit more colorful. Recur is kind of... What was the game that had that indie guy that everybody hates now? Braid. That one. Had like the time traveling thing with like platformer that also had some kind of like time element to it. Anyway, Recur also has this kind of time element, but it seems the way it works is if you walk to the left, time goes backwards. If you walk to the right, time goes forwards. So you're kind of puzzling to try to get through different areas and using the different time stages to try to, manage to get around different areas and stuff like that. There's a section here, I think, I skipped ahead of it. There's a section here where he like runs backwards and like there's dogs that were chasing him end up behind a gate and you can pull the switch. And now if you run to the right, obviously they can't chase you anymore kind of thing. So it's that kind of game, which I think looked pretty interesting. And then last one, In Hope Voiden. So In Hope Voiden is a kind of first-person survival horror type thing. And the kind of interesting aspect to it is it's somewhat permadeath. So it's 12 different characters. You start as one character and you're basically trying to get as far as you can in their scenario, but if you die, you just jump to the next character kind of thing. And depending on how far you got, you may have made situations harder or easier for the next character and stuff like that. So it's got some interesting interplay, and I think all of the characters have like some kind of story in common with them. Anyway, a lot of as you probably saw, all of those games were just wishlist now. There's no there's no release date or anything like that. And I think of like the 110 games showing off, I don't think any of them are like, there's a couple of them that are this year at some point, but I don't think any of them had like a hard release date. So it's still quite a while. A lot of them still in development. Anyway, outside of the showcases, we had a couple of other updates. So this is from... I can't remember the name of the fucking developer now. NeoWiz? No. NeoWiz is Lies of P. That's not them. Nexon? Whoever does Marvel Rivals. That developer. Or that publisher, but this is an in-house developed game. So this would have been the next thing from the Naraka Blade Point developers. Naraka Blade Point is sort of an online arena arena melee combat hero. Can't really call it a hero shooter, and it's not exactly a MOBA. It's kind of somewhat in between the two of them. I'm probably describing that really poorly. Anyway, this isn't that. This has way more in common with like Uncharted than it does with Naraka Blade Point. So it's kind of like historical, like Tang Dynasty China Uncharted is kind of what we're going for. I don't think you're really getting the Uncharted vibe until a little bit later. Combat-wise, it's all very kind of crunchy, but it also seems like it's a lot of like canned animations, which again is very Uncharted, The Last of Us's melee combat specifically. There's no guns, obviously it's Tang Dynasty, there's no guns yet. So it's going to be all like melee based effectively. But how exactly the combat works, not clear. Is it going to be as kind of basic as like the Uncharted games or what have you, or is it going to be a little bit more to it than that? You do have, weapons, you do have a sword, you do have, I think he has a staff at some point? I'm not sure. But yeah, very cinematic, very character and narrative driven kind of thing that they're showing off. There's a little bit more of the combat here, you get a little bit more of it. But again, not clear how much of this is, conditional, contextual, or if there's an actual combat system at play. A lot of The Last of Us was very contextual melee combat, and Uncharted was a very basic one at that as well. Anyway, fairly lengthy trailer. I won't go through the whole thing, but it looks very interesting. Anyway, moving on. Some less fun news, I suppose. Hypnospace Outlaws sequel Dream Settler has now been officially cancelled. The creator basically says, I'm burnt out and I just can't do it anymore, effectively. So, due to a mutual decision between Jay Tholen, original developer Hypnospace Outlaw, and creator for this game, and their publisher, No More Robots, they've basically said that, yeah, we're just going to pull the plug on this. That it wasn't the publisher's decision, it was his own decision. I didn't want to make a video like this, but I'll cut to the chase. Dream Settler has been cancelled. It means it's not coming out. It won't be finished. This was a mutual decision between the publisher and I. They didn't pull support or anything, and they tried what they could to keep it going, but it's just time to stop it. And there's a couple of more quotes here from the video. It's about 10 minutes or so. But yeah, the short of it is, it's just the way he develops games. Having a budget and having a design plan and having like a top-down kind of things just was really butting against the way he develops games. And he fully admits that he's like, I know this is a me problem, and it's just the way I like to do work just doesn't fit in with a plan, effectively. So I guess he likes to just wing stuff or whatever. This is like almost 5 years of my life. This was a big one. I had so many hopes. But we just need to stop this because of money and practical concerns. I have to stop. Hopefully you can release some of it as like a blog or like a documentary or what have you, but effectively the game itself won't be happening. Yeah, I'm sorry, this stinks. A normal team where there wasn't some guy who needed to work a weird way, we would have finished this by now, but obviously that's not how it's happening. So it's not great news. Hypnospace Outlaw is a really fun game. And the sort of pseudo follow-up Terminal Aftermath is also pretty fun. But like the original's still there. You can still play it. Like that hasn't gone anywhere. Anyway, that's not great news. Even more not so great news. Debatable. For me anyway, this is a bit more of a kind of saw this coming, I guess. Beat Games is ending support for Beat Saber on PS4 and PS5, so effectively the PSVR 2 versions of Beat Saber are feature complete as far as Beat Games is concerned right now. So they're going to end support for the PS4 and PS5 versions, so the PSVR and PSVR 2 respectively. They'll no longer be releasing updates for the title as of June, so now, basically. Multiplayer support will also be removed at the beginning of next year, so 21st of January. As we look to the future and plan the next big leap for Beat Saber, we have made the decision to no longer release updates for those consoles. Our passion for VR remains unwavering. We are excited about the possibilities that lie ahead and what we can bring to Beat Saber fans who've been on this journey with us over the past 7 years. So it does sound like financially they're not getting anything out of the PSVR and PSVR 2 versions. Potentially just the PlayStation VR version, I could see it as like a technical limitation that they don't want to keep supporting it, but the PSVR 2 is like a pretty decent VR headset. So it's not really a technical problem for the VR 2 version or the PS5 version, so it does seem like it is more of a financial thing. Do keep in mind that Beat Saber is owned by Meta specifically, so it's not owned by like a small development team or whatever. That's like a pretty big corporate thing, which is absolutely going to be money first situation. Anyway, Beat Saber was the most downloaded PSVR 2 title in the United States, Canada, and Europe of last year. It's unlikely that has changed. Beat Saber is effectively the VR game, and your platform not having it is kind of a big problem. Anyway, from Sony's side of things, they effectively shipped the PSVR 2 and then promptly forgot about it, which is... I shouldn't be surprised, and yet every time it happens, I'm surprised. Because they did the same thing with the PSP, they did the same thing with the original PlayStation VR, they did the same thing with the PlayStation Vita. I'm surprised they haven't done it with PlayStation Portal, to be honest. But I also feel like the PlayStation Portal is a pretty basic piece of technology, you know? It's not like it's doing anything new, not new, it's not like it's doing anything different that Sony would have to cater for, you know? It's just a mirroring device, as opposed to like the handhelds are their own hardware, and the VR units are their own hardware, and so on. PlayStation TV, they did nothing with that as well, and so on. Anyway, so they halted production of PlayStation VR due to flagging sales. Sony has made pretty significant cuts to funding for VR games, so ordinarily third-party developers would get, like, if you bring your game to PSVR 2, we'll give you a chunk of money to help in development. They effectively stopped doing that. And the PSVR 2 itself had a pretty huge price drop, down to $400, used to be $550, and I think it's getting another one soon enough, so it's effectively the end, really, of PSVR 2. Like, as soon as the Astrobot game didn't have a PSVR 2 element to it, that effectively signals that that's kind of it. Sony's just doesn't give a shit about that platform anymore. It's a reminder that Astrobot started as a PlayStation VR, the original title, and there were like three, I think, VR titles that had Astro in it, and then the Astrobot game that was like Game of the Year and so on didn't have a VR element to it, which is a bit shit. But it also signaled that Sony don't give a shit about that platform anymore. Anyway, moving on, the free game over on the Epic Games Store this week is The Operator, which is a kind of interesting meta game where you're playing a not FBI tech guy and kind of trying to solve cases through like your PC interface kind of thing. It's pretty good. I quite liked it. It's a bit short is probably my only issue with it. Anyway, monthly games, we're past like the halfway spot in June, so we're gonna have the Xbox Game Pass refresh, or the second wave, or what have you. So Rematch is a day one thing on Game Pass. We'll talk about that in a second. Got all of the Warcraft remasters, 1, 2, and 3. Call of Duty World War II. Again, I was surprised it wasn't already there. Against the Storm, I think is like a tower defense thing. Little Nightmares 2, I think, has been on Game Pass before. It's a side-scrolling physics puzzle platformer with like kind of horror elements. I don't know what Volcano Princess is. Rise of the Tomb Raider is the second of the reboots. I don't know why that's only being added to Game Pass now. I feel like that has been there already for quite a while. Anyway, maybe it's joining the cloud version or something like that. Star Trucker is a bit like Euro Truck Simulator, but you're in space. And then Wild Frost is a pretty fun deck builder type game. So what the fuck is Against the Storm? Against the Storm. It's currently on PC. Oh, it's a city builder. Okay. Rebuild civilization in the face of apocalyptic rains. Lead humans, beavers, lizards, foxes, and harpies to reclaim the wilderness. Okay, so it's like a base management kind of thing. And then Volcano Princess. Where's that? Volcano Princess. Prepare the next monarch by finding her hobbies, training her for battle, and befriending the citizens she'll one day protect. It's a parenting simulator RPG? Okay. Alright, weird. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, joining both Game Pass and PlayStation Plus is FBC Firebreak. This is the multiplayer, somewhat Left 4 Dead-ish kind of game from Remedy, and it's kind of set in the Control universe in the oldest house. I think it is set like prior to the events of Control, I would imagine, considering you've sort of sorted the whole Hiss thing by the end of Control. But anyway, I assume it's somewhat it's either like you're just mopping up the remnants of it, or it's set before the events of Control. I don't know. It's not quite as serious as the Control game. It's like a very tongue-in-cheek kind of comedy element to it. From what I've seen from reviews, it's fun, but there's like not a lot to it, and it's very grindy. And Remedy have kind of said that they are planning to like redo a bit of the economy and make it not such a kind of chore to like upgrade your character and what have you. From what I've seen, there's only like a couple of scenarios, like 5, I think, scenarios that you can play through. So that's like not a lot for the kind of game that it is. So yeah, I don't know. I think the reviews have been somewhat middling in that, yeah, the regular gameplay of it is fine, but the kind of progression system, and that there's not a ton to do once you've played all 5 scenarios. There's not like, you're not going to be doing anything necessarily new. You're just going to be doing it better, I guess. Anyway, it's FBC Firebreak. It is free though, free on PlayStation Plus and Game Pass. So I mean, you do have that going for you. You could check it out. Elsewhere, also on Game Pass, is Rematch. So the idea with Rematch was to take, you know, the standard football games that are typically played from like an isometric perspective, and to effectively say you can just control the player instead. The other way to look at it is it's Rocket League, but you're a person, basically. Which, I mean, Rocket League was just, it's football, but you're a car. Anyway, again, reviews-wise, it's been like, the games are fun to play, like the perspective shift makes it very, very different and so on. From what I've seen, like social media-wise, it seems like nobody will pass the ball, and that's very playground football. It's just people hogging the ball all the time. So, I mean, if that's what they were going to mimic, it's certainly working. And then otherwise, there's no crossplay. I think they did say that there was going to be crossplay at launch, but there isn't. So that is kind of the first thing they're working on for the next update, is to get crossplay working correctly. Anyway, that's Rematch. Date Everything, that was delayed a couple of times. The idea with Date Everything is it's a dating simulator, but you're dating everything. So effectively you're dating your furniture. You know, you can date your washing machine, you can date the front door of your house, you can date like a bookcase or the fridge or whatever, and they all have their own kind of storyline and their own kind of wants and needs and what have you. It's all voice acted, it's all very impressive kind of thing, but it is at its core a visual novel. So if you're not into the visual novel things, you're probably not going to see anything particularly action heavy, we'll say. It's very much a story. Anyway, it does seem very funny though. Moving on, Chronicles of the Wolf both got a release date trailer and was released, I think, pretty much on the same day. Anyway, Chronicles of the Wolf we've talked about a couple of times. This is from a developer who primarily had made a lot of Castlevania fan games, and is effectively now making their own Castlevania-ish like game. Chronicles of the Wolf, you're playing somebody Lombardo, I forget his first name, trying to hunt down the beast of somewhere. I forget where exactly, some French sounding name. But yeah, it's very much, hey, this is Castlevania, but we can't call it Castlevania pretty much. Seems like it's pretty cool. The demo is quite good as well. There's a demo available if you want to check it out yourselves. Last one on the new releases, Tron Catalyst. This is the follow-up to the last Tron game, also by Mike Bithell. I forget what it's called. But that game was a lot more of a visual novel, almost detective kind of game, whereas Tron Catalyst is more of a roguelike, I guess. But set in the Tron universe, you've got this kind of, you've got the identity disc thing or the data disc thing that works like a discus, but it also kind of ping pongs off enemies and stuff like that. You can control the curvature of the swing and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Like, it's a pretty cool combat game. I don't think you even really need to know a whole lot about Tron to kind of get the most out of it. Obviously, the more you do know about it, the better, but I don't think you need to have played the previous game or anything like that. I think it's its own standalone thing. Anyway, combat-wise, it looked pretty interesting. The rest of the game, I don't know, but combat-wise, it looked pretty cool. Anyway, unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So, Bungie indefinitely delays Marathon to address negative fan feedback. Everybody put on your shocked faces. All right, anyway. I think this was essentially assumed that Marathon was going to be delayed. So it was supposed to be launching in September. It's now no longer launching in September. However, it has no new release date. So it is effectively delayed indefinitely until they decide to come out with a release date for it. Reasons for it, citing feedback received during the alpha. The game effectively felt underwhelming. Wasn't a great solo experience. There was lacking any kind of tension. It's meant to be an extraction shooter kind of thing. You're meant to have a little bit of tension with other players who might try to, stab you in the back and take your stuff and that kind of thing. And it was felt that either you just never encountered other players because the maps were so big or something like that. I think there just wasn't a tension in the gameplay. And then kind of the big one that I've highlighted in red instead is that not feeling like it's part of the actual Marathon franchise in any way. It's like, that might be a problem. Anyway, we have taken all of this to heart. We know we need more time to craft Marathon into the game that truly reflects your passion. If you knew that, why did you put out an alpha? Anyway, after much discussion with our dev team, capital D, we've made the decision to delay the September 23rd release. I kind of feel like Sony made that decision for you, but okay. Anyway. Some other things that they highlighted, like other things that people were talking about, that they wanted to make the game more challenging and engaging. They wanted to improve its visual fidelity. I don't know if that's really an issue. Like, I feel like it has its own visual identity. Now, granted, they stole it from somebody, but it does have its own visual identity. I think that one point was made about, like, the maps and what have you, is that the interiors are really cool, really slick looking. Again, they do have that, appropriation of somebody else's designs without their consent issue going with them. But it does look pretty cool, interiors. The problem is that you don't spend a lot of time inside. You spend most of your time outside, moving between locations. And the outside is a pretty boring forest environment, I think, is kind of the gist of it. And they want to make that a little bit better. But again, I'm going to highlight one that seems like is pretty telling on how they've approached developing the game. They also plan to add proximity chat, a highly requested feature that exists in most other popular extraction shooters but wasn't going to be included in Marathon. How can you make these games and not look at, like, what's standard in this kind of genre and decide, nah, we're just not going to do that? Anyway, again, I think it feels kind of telling that either Marathon started as some other type of game and they've now had to change it, or the extraction elements are tacked on and they're not really trying to make an extraction shooter so much as they're just making a... I don't know. I don't really know what kind of game they're trying to make. Anyway, Some things they're planning to do: up the survival game, so make the enemies harder, make the NPC AI a little bit more difficult, better loot, more dynamic events, make combat more tense and strategic. I don't know how you do that by just not making headshots kill you in one shot, but anyway. Doubling down on the Marathon universe. You haven't singled down yet on the Marathon universe, but okay. Increased visual fidelity. I don't know how that helps. I feel like they don't know what the word fidelity means. Fidelity just means how close to life it is. How close to real life. You know, how accurate, how high definition it is, what have you. That doesn't mean anything. Plus the old Marathon games look like shit because they were so old. But anyway, more narrative and environmental storytelling to discover and interact with. Okay, fine. Kind of feel like you should focus on just this bit. Just a narrative bit. Give people a reason to actually play the game. A darker tone that delivers on the themes of the original trilogy. That's not something you can just turn around quickly without like changing a lot. And then more social experiences, like we said, proximity chat and better solo and duo stuff. Again, not something you can change really easily. And that is highlighted in what the alpha feedback for the game was. So they're trying to make a round-based hero shooter with extraction elements rather than an extraction game. You know, so they're kind of trying to do... They're trying to do like a half and half of Overwatch and Tarkov. And I don't think those two games go together well. Anyway, the alpha didn't go over very well. A lot of people saying that visually the game looked pretty plain and boring outside of its lavishly detailed interiors. The maps were too small. Despite the maps being really small, they also didn't encounter other PvP players, so that's not great. The loot wasn't great. I feel that the vast majority of these kind of loot-based games, the loot is shit. Like, none of them have ever really matched up to stuff like Diablo or Neo or something like that. And the reason for that is Diablo and Neo just had random bullshit. Even Borderlands kind of does it a bit better. And I feel like Destiny in particular had like 4 guns and you just changed the stats on them. And it's like, that's not fun. That's not engaging. Nobody wants to see a plus 5% or a plus 6% check on thing. They want to see like a drastically different thing that you're picking up for your loot. And I've always felt that they're kind of shit about it, really. I'm drawing a blank on other games that do it like this as well, but so many of them just have trash loot. And I don't mean that like they put out like shit versions of stuff that you're looking for. I mean the stuff they give you is boring. It's just the same gun you already have with a different number on it, like, or a different palette swap, you know? It's not like drastically a different model or anything like that. Anyway, worst of all, it felt like a lot of this wouldn't be fixed or improved on in the 6 months before Marathon's planned September launch. So whenever they actually have the launch, I still don't think they're going to have enough time to like drastically change the game. Anyway, I think the last thing about this was just saying how this delay kind of saw it coming. You know, they didn't talk about it during the state of play. They didn't have their own distinct state of play that they, you know, I suppose they did, but it, you know, wasn't very impressive. Herman Hulst, head of PlayStation Studios, like basically just said fiscal year for Marathon and didn't say anything. He didn't specifically mention September, like, so it's kind of assumed that it's been delayed into next year, probably. Anyway, kind of saw this coming, but I don't think they have enough time to actually make a big enough change. I could be wrong, but I don't think they'll have enough time to do it. Anyway, moving on. Third-party Switch 2 game sales have started off slow. One publisher selling this below our lowest expectations. So while the Switch 2 hardware itself is having a record-breaking launch, it would seem that the third-party market is not feeling the love in that sense. Most third-party games have struggled to sell on the Switch 2. One third-party publisher characterized the numbers as below our lowest estimates despite strong hardware sales. Now, you can chalk this up to kind of basically third-party games don't sell well on Nintendo platforms in general. Anyway, 62% of Switch 2 physical game sales in the US during the console's launch week came from first-party titles. Not exactly surprising. Even This even excludes Mario Kart World, which would have been a bundled game, but also would have been a draw for a lot of people. Not for me particularly, but for a lot of people. What we are talking about, though, is Mario Kart World and effectively The Legend of Zelda. The two The Legend of Zelda games is kind of what we're looking at. And then Cyberpunk is in there, but it's like the only third-party game that got a lot. And that's... I feel a lot of that is because it was used a lot in marketing. To kind of show that, hey, yeah, we can do the typical Nintendo games you're expecting, but we can also do like graphical powerhouses like Cyberpunk 2077 and what have you. And the UK market, it's effectively the same. It's just Cyberpunk, I think, is third instead of second. Anyway, you can highlight numerous potential reasons here from the article's author. The fact that most people are playing Mario Kart World, and that's all they're playing on their Switch 2 right now, and they'll get to the other games eventually. The Switch 2 has a pretty good backwards compatibility, meaning they have the entire Switch catalog to play. And the fact that there just aren't many reviews for the Switch 2 versions of the third-party games. And then the last one is like resistance, because the game keycard thing effectively means you're buying like a download code, essentially, which not a lot of people are cool about. I would instead say that all of these third-party games are ports that already exist on other consoles and have had numerous sales where people have been able to pick them up for way less than what they're going for on the Switch 2. The majority of third-party Switch 2 launch titles are also ports of games that have been released earlier on other consoles, meaning it's likely that players who wanted those games have already found a way to buy them by now. Cyberpunk 2077, remember when it launched originally? It launched in dire straits. You know, people were able to get refunds for it, but at the same time, people were able to buy it for like $5. And then eventually it got like a lot of patches, and now it's a decent game again. But that's not the only game that has that kind of extreme, I guess, a launch thing. But the games have been out long enough that Steam has definitely featured them in numerous sales at this point. PlayStation probably has also had them in numerous sales. They've probably been added to Game Pass and stuff like that. So chances are your core player, and it's kind of pointed out here, is that many core players own some other powerful gaming hardware and a Nintendo Switch. So chances are, if they really wanted to play whatever these third-party games are that are having low sales on the Switch 2, it's because they've already done it. You know, they've already found a way to do it. So yeah, I don't know what kind of sales expectations they had, but somebody might need to remind them of the history of third-party success on Nintendo consoles. Anyway, moving on. Okay, this is kind of a weird story. So Nexus Mods' new owner is a company whose co-founder has already had to reassure folks that NFTs and crypto aren't incoming. So earlier in the week, Nexus Mods announced a change in ownership. The original owner, who had owned it for like 25 years or something like that, was stepping back due to like burnout, health reasons and stuff like that, and was effectively ceding control to 3 other people. And at the time, it was not mentioned, you know, what exactly was the pedigree of these 3 other people. He just kind of name dropped them and had some links to their Nexus Mods accounts, but nothing about like, you know, what makes these people suited to run Nexus Mods or what have you. And it seemed kind of odd that you wouldn't point out to like, this person used to work for here and that's why they'd work out, yada yada, you know. It was so odd that it kind of left the Nexus Mods users to do their own sleuthing, more or less, to kind of figure out who these people were. And it was transpired that the 3 people all work for a company called Chosen. And Chosen has a bit of a not great history. Anyway, speaking about why they didn't tell people about the new owners, we didn't go into too much detail about the new ownership in the initial post, but the community has been quick to put on their investigator hats, you shits, digging into the new owners' identities, backgrounds, beliefs, even their favorite football teams, and speculating on what this might mean for modding. You fucks, it's not supposed to be looking into us, how dare you? A bit of Reddit or Twitter sleuthing will surface most of what they found, so again, they still didn't put forward their own version of it. You know, they're still not saying that, yeah, I am this person and this is what I bring to the table or what have you. They're still largely staying silent and letting you read into what the user base is deciding to surface for you, which again is not a great look. Anyway, they did eventually come back to say, we're the new owners and ultimate decision makers at Nexus Mods. We'll share more about ourselves when we've earned that right. What? No. Fucking tell us about. There's no earning a right, whatever, here. I don't know where they're coming with that. Like it's some kind of honored position. And they need to... I don't know. Like, when we've earned that right... I feel... Why would you be put in the position of owner if you hadn't... If you felt there was some kind of moral thing about this, that you would have to earn the right to be the owner of Nexus Mods instead of just throw a bunch of money at somebody, you wouldn't be in that position. You know, you would figure you've already earned that right then, in that case. Unless, of course, you don't feel like you've earned the right to be the owner of Nexus Mods, in which case, why are you the owner of Nexus Mods? That's one side of it. The other side of it is we don't want to tell you about our past because you might find something you don't like, and they did. Anyway, for now, we're focused on listening, learning, and making modding even easier, and yes, you'll see us around in the community being active. Why are you focused on listening, learning, and so on? Surely that should have happened before now. Anyway, we're not charging... Oh, sorry, we're not charging. We might be charging. We're not changing the core model. No aggressive monetization, no paid mods. If anything, we're aiming for fewer ads and not more. Doubt. Anyway, so some history on Chosen. Chosen was founded January of this year, so it's very young. Their business model seems to be buying into or buying up community-focused platforms, so they've already gone after, like, EA Football Club community things. I think some Blender kind of render communities and stuff like that, and effectively running them, and then allowing the founders to either stay on or take a chunk of money and leave. And that seems to be their business model, and it's a weird one, but anyway... One of the founders of Chosen, who is now one of the owners of Nexus Mods, though, has some kind of interesting LinkedIn stuff. So he had recently published a gaming startup monetization cheat sheet. And this is quite recently. What's the exact date? Yeah, 7 months ago, so it's not exactly that long ago. Anyway, NFTs and crypto mentioned heavily in this cheat sheet. When asked about that, he said 100% not happening. We'll see. Again, exact same guy 4 months ago, post saying that he predicts that in 2025, AI will enable solo devs to create $100 million hits, two-person teams to build AAA games. No, it won't. An AI-powered modding will revolutionize game development. No, it won't. Or if it does, it's in a bad way. Bad revolution. Anyway. Originally announcing the ownership change in a way that left folks needing to do some pretty in-depth detective work to find out exactly who was taking over seems a strange and counterproductive move on Nexus Mods' part, at least from a PR perspective, and I would have to agree. Why did you make it so opaque about who the new owners are? You're just inviting mistrust. Like, from the outset. This is not a good way to get off on... You know, you're not getting off on a good foot here by deliberately hiding your credentials. Anyway. And against a modding community, of all people. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of hiding your credentials, I don't know. Anyway, Warner Brothers... being fucking idiots again. Warner Bros. Games restructures into divisions centered on their core franchises, meaning they are absolutely not going to do anything new, ever. They've restructured into divisions centered on its 4 biggest brands. Before I say who they are, get them in your head. What are Warner Bros. Games' 4 biggest brands? They're missing one really big one, for some reason. Anyway, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Mortal Kombat, and the DC Universe. Which one are they missing that's really, really big? Arguably bigger than all 4 of them. It's Lord of the Rings. Why don't they have Lord? Anyway, 3 current studio heads have been promoted because they did such a great job. I guess they need to be promoted. So currently, Warner Bros. Games Montreal studio head will be taking over, or effectively be overseeing developers who are working on Harry Potter and Game of Thrones games, because historically they've been so good. Harry Potter Legacy, or Hogwarts Legacy, is very much an outlier. The vast majority of Harry Potter games have not done well. And Game of Thrones, I can't even think of a Game of Thrones game other than the Telltale game. And I don't think that did well either, considering the studio went under. Anyway, okay, Game of Thrones is one of your central IPs? Really? Really? Her? Anyway. Then head of NetherRealm Studios will be looking after Mortal Kombat and DC titles. Sure sounds like they're not planning another Batman Arkham if they're giving it to the fighting game guys. Now, yes, a lot of these guys are going to be like higher up management who have very much nothing to do with the creative side of the game. They could still very much be going down the Batman Arkham kind of thing. I don't think we necessarily need another Arkham game, but I mean, I would like one. You know, I do like those games. I would like another one. I do think Rocksteady have a lot of ground to make up for, like, the player base in particular. I don't think trusts them for their next game, considering Suicide Squad. And I don't think Warner Brothers Games itself trusts Rocksteady anymore, even though they mandated that they make that game. You know, thanks for doing the thing we told you to do. Now, you know, now fuck you. Anyway, the third guy will be overseeing the, like the tech stack effectively, so not necessarily games, it's just like the technology they use to make those games. QA, customer service, that kind of thing. Lol, customer service or Warner Bros. Anyway, they managed to do all of this restructuring with no layoffs on the executive level. Wow, incredible. It's a shame you can't seem to do that any other time you do restructuring. But no, none of the executives lost their job. That's some good shit. Anyway, this is kind of the fallout from when Warner Brothers Discovery, the bigger company, decided to split themselves into two publicly traded companies. So now we have Warner Brothers Global Networks and Warner Brothers Streaming and Studios. This is effectively a way to divest themselves of debt. So they're going to pile all of the debt onto one company and basically let it sink. And the other company will get to just continue working. Because you're allowed to do that. Apparently that's an okay thing that we've agreed that corporations are allowed to do. Anyway, it's been a bit of a tumultuous year for Warner Brothers. It's kind of burying the lead here. Hogwarts Legacy, I guess, did well, and then basically everything else did shit. So Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League was really meant to be something that was going to hang around for like 5, 6, 7 years and just keep making them money, which it obviously has not done. So that, you know, didn't do great. Then they shuttered Multiverses. Again, something that I think they expected to hang around a lot more. Harry Potter Quidditch Champions is put in here. I don't know why they thought that would do well, but okay. And then Mortal Kombat 1, despite selling 5 million copies, it was considered an underwhelming sales performer. So, you know, they've definitely got their sales estimates in line. 5 million copies. And that's at new game prices. And they think that was an underperformance. Okay. Cool. So we're doing Square Enix sales expectations here now. So Suicide Squad's failure is probably one of the primary factors, but it obviously didn't help that most of their other games did not do particularly great either. Then they shuttered a bunch of developers. Player First Games development studio was shut down with Multiverses. Monolith was shut down for no reason, even though they've made some pretty good games for them. They made the Shadow of Mordor games. They made the Fear games. No, get fucked. They were making a Wonder Woman game. And then one of the support studios was shut down as well. So, you know, you think with that restructuring that maybe they've got their head on straight and they've got some good games on, you know, on the horizon. Well, they've got Mortal Kombat 1 Definitive Edition. Okay. And then they got a mobile RPG. And then they got a Switch 2 port of Hogwarts Legacy. Okay. Future looks really good for them. Alright. Last one. Playdead co-founder slammed with lawsuit as bitter row with co-founder escalates. This is kind of a weird one. So, back in like 2016, 2017, something like that, the co-founders of Playdead kind of split. Playdead are the Limbo team, effectively. And now one of them is allegedly being sued by the other due to breach of like confidentiality or something like that. Anyway, So Dino Patti is being threatened with a lawsuit. So he hasn't actually been sued, but he's been threatened with it. Hang on, it says he slammed with a lawsuit and then threatened with a lawsuit. I'm not sure if threatening with a lawsuit, does that mean I will sue you? Or is like, here is a lawsuit and I'm threatening you with it? I'm not sure. It's, again, not clear because there's no like court date or anything like that, so we don't know. Anyway, it's allegedly because after, well, this highlight's very useful. After I can't fucking read that, so I actually need to get rid of this highlight. Anyway, after he posted a now deleted LinkedIn post that shared an unauthorized picture of co-founder, the other guy, Arndt Jensen, and discussed some of Limbo's development, so it's alleged that this is a breach of confidentiality. So anyway, Paddy said that Arndt Jensen demanded a little over $73K dollars and suitable compensation and reimbursements doesn't necessarily have to be in cash, adding that he had repeatedly had such letters over the last 9 years. So this is not the first time he's had these letters, but it might be the first time he's had a lawsuit. Paddy left Playdead in 2016, as it was alleged in 2017 in a Danish newspaper that a rift had developed between the two of them, which effectively led to Dino Paddy leaving the company. Again, I can't fucking read what this says. Paddy claimed Limbo's credits had been patched and changed, deleting his contribution, which was originally Director of Development, and he's now been changed to Executive Producer, which again is a pretty shitty thing to do. The game's already out, he definitely did work on it, and you were happy to have him down as Director of Development at the time. It's, you know, it's a pretty shit way to handle. Even if you do have some bad blood between the two of you, that isn't really something you should be doing. Anyway, the lawsuit is an alleged breach of confidentiality. By providing recipients with core insights to the process of developing Limbo, you are falsely giving the impression that you played a significant role, including a creative role in the development of the game. I don't know why this is a big deal, unless he's trying to like make money off the idea that he created Limbo, which I guess they might have. It might take some umbrage with it, because I think he was mostly the business end of things. But regardless, the business guys get the credit for everything. But anyway, the real issue here is like, because of the confidentiality claims, we don't really know what was the cause of the rift between them, and whether it's like a genuine beef or if this is some sort of artistic spat or what have you. Anyway, Patry had this to say, that the cool thing is that journalists, like the journalist he was having this interview with, can request access to everything that happens. They can request the access, they're not going to get it. Anyway, I won't hold anything back. I'll basically be legally required to, no you won't, release all the images and material showing what's going on. Not to the journalist, you won't. If this actually goes to court though, he would, discovery-wise, he would be required to release all of that information. So whether they actually want this to go to court or not, it seems that Patty does want this to go to court. Anyway, this is kind of a weird one. It's kind of developing. We'll see what happens when we come back to it later. Anyway, we'll leave Firebreak to loop in the background. Anyway, that was your news for the 16th to the 22nd of June, 2025. Again, not a whole lot of new stuff to talk about, because Summer Game Fest has only just passed us, and Steam Next Fest has also only just passed us, so it's going to be a while before we're going to see any like big news. Gamescom, I think, is next month. Probably the next any kind of big thing you'll hear about. That's not to say there isn't a bunch of industry bullshit happening. That's always happening. There's always the possibility for something like that coming out. Anyway, the Donkey Kong Bonanza stuff, like, it does look like a good game. It does look like it'll be fun. I'm just not exactly salivating at the idea of playing it, but I think it'll be fine. I also don't own a Switch 2, so that's probably gonna, it's gonna prevent me from playing it in the first place. Blood of Dawnwalker, I need to know how the time element works. I need to know if it's a Majora's Mask thing where you can rewind time, or I forget what game it is, but there's another game where you can effectively decide when the day ends and when it transitions into night and stuff like that. Instead of there just being like a daytime or day-night time cycle kind of thing. I get the feeling that it's a daytime-night cycle. Day-night time cycle is what's going to be happening, and I don't know how I feel about that. Unless the game is like kind of short and it's expected that you'll, replay it a couple of times to get like the best usage of time out of it. I don't know. Anyway, they said that at the time where they were playing it, it was mid-game, and it was like 22 days left. So I don't know how much time you start with, I guess. But if we say that like that's halfway, you start with like 40 days, maybe. Anyway, we'll see. Like how much of the tutorial is going to be like, lol, you just lost 10 days. Anyway, the 110 games to get hyped about Fest. I know it seems like 110 games is a lot to do within an hour, and it is, but I think they do a good job of like splitting it up and putting things into categories and stuff like that. It's not quite as scattershot as like Summer Games Fest kind of felt like, where they just had random games just thrown in on top of each other. They do a much better job of being like, here's a bunch of first-person shooters, here's a bunch of horror games, here's a bunch of whatever. Anyway, industry bullshit-wise, I mean, we're not exactly surprised that Marathon was delayed. I guess the real question is what date are they going to, delay it to? How much of the game are they planning to change? How much of that change will even matter? We don't know. And the thing is, delaying Marathon means Sony effectively only have Ghost of Yotai now, this year. Because Concord obviously doesn't count, because it didn't fucking come out. So yeah, it really just highlights Sony's push for the live service thing was just a massive mistake. How many of those games they've had to delay, how many of them were just outright cancelled, and it's meant there's just a massive hole in Sony's first-party output. So it's probably been like one of their worst first-party outputs console-wise for the PS5. PS4 had some amazing ones. PS3 wasn't great. PS2 had some incredible first-party games and so on. So maybe it's a case of like PlayStation 6 will have like the really good ones. I don't know. It's only even PlayStation console get the really good exclusive. Necessarily, PlayStation 1 had some very, very good ones as well. Although I don't know how many of those were first-party. They certainly had some really good exclusives, but I don't. A lot of them are third-party games. Anyway, Switch 2 third-party games not selling well. Again, look at any Nintendo console. I don't think they've ever sold well, except for like very early Nintendo, Super Nintendo. Once PlayStation kind of got into it, that effectively became the third-party box. I forget what else was in the industry bullshit now, to be honest. The Warner Brothers, I don't know what they're doing, and honestly, there's been some rumors that other publishers are looking into buying out Warner Brothers' video game IP. I really fucking feel they should just let them do it, honestly. They'll do a better job. Maybe, I don't know. It depends, I guess, who buys them out. I mean, Microsoft have the money, but I still think they're kind of feeling a bit of the pain of the 69 billion acquisition of Activision. So I don't see it being them. Sony, maybe. Just because they've got a much smaller developer pool now with all of the layoffs and all of the games that have been cancelled. So chances are they will look at an acquisition to try to make up for that. I don't know. Or it could be somebody else, It could be EA, or it won't be Ubisoft. Ubisoft don't have the money. Anyway, who knows? Who knows who it'll be? Anyway, that's your news for the 16th to the 22nd of June, 2025. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you thought of those 110 games. Did you pick out any that you thought might have been interesting? I highly highlighted games that one were interesting to me, and two I'd never heard of. There were definitely some other games that were shown off that I knew about already. They still look really cool. I just didn't highlight them. And then I wanted to reduce it to 5 because I didn't want to go into like, here's 20 games that I liked from that showcase. This is going to take forever. Right. Anyway, but let me know what you guys thought about it. Right. I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Oh, the Discord. Fuck's sake. Every time. Discord's in the description. Cool. All right. Now. Bye.